board will be in order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Quorum call.
Director Black?
Here.
Director Kreutz?
Here.
Director Dakotas?
Here.
Director Heath?
Here.
Director Marian?
Here.
Director Moses?
Here.
Director Meserve?
Here.
Director Sargent?
Here.
Director Silvestri?
Here.
Director Welch?
Here.
Chairman Carlo?
Present.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Ms. Thibodeau?
Excused.
Ms. Bergoli?
Here.
We have 11 members present and none excused.
11 members present and no members absent. A quorum is present. Moment of silence for Sharon Beatty, who sadly passed away on December 25th, 2023. Ms. Beatty worked as a bus driver and lunch monitor for over 22 years before retiring in 2003. She loved her kids and enjoyed driving for sports trips and for the summer rec program. On behalf of the Bonnie Eagle community, we send our condolences and heartfelt wishes to Ms. Beatty's family. Will you please now join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Item 5, acceptance of the agenda. Chair recognizes Director Welch.
I move that we accept the agenda.
Director Welch moves to accept the agenda. Is there a second? Director Heath, pending question is acceptance of the agenda. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 11 members voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. The motion prevails and the agenda is accepted. Item 6, public comment session. Chair inquires if there are any members of the public who wish to address the board. Seeing none. Presentation, Facilities Master Plan from Harriman and Associates. The chair recognizes the superintendent.
Yes. Tonight we have with us representatives from Harriman Associates who have helped us work through a facilities master plan. We spent many meetings, many months doing this work, and it is not anything to approve or vote on tonight necessarily. It is just to make sure the board is up to date on where we stand on some of our latest sort of thoughts on what we might do if we are approved for a project, a construction project. There was considerable effort made to involve the community. Our participation was still sort of low, but we do have some community voice into this. There was a committee that met with board representation, and they will summarize that for us tonight. Thank you.
There we go. I was going to say, it didn't sound like I was amplified. And which are due at the end of the summer. We will take you step by step process overview. We held a kickoff meeting and regular meetings with the advisory committee. They helped steer this process. We came to them with data, and they were able to arrive at different decisions based on the framework set up throughout the project. We identified and confirmed the project goals, both with the advisory committee and those who attended in public. Conducted an enrollment study, and so this was looking at historic and projected enrollment. And we reviewed space utilization within the schools, meeting with different leadership at each of the schools, identifying how the space is used, where it was oversized, undersized, and what spaces might be missing. We hosted educational visioning sessions, so understanding that you are operating your schools today to meet today's needs, but knowing that in the future you will have different needs. What might those look like? What are you planning for, and how do the facilities support that? We conducted facility conditions analysis, where we built off of the previous report that you had and went through and identified different things that we saw as architects and engineers that should be added to that, and different scopes of work that need to be addressed, and helped us form the options that came forward. And we produced and evaluated those options with not only the advisory committee, but in public forums. And we engaged with the community throughout the forums and followed up in thought exchange and identified prominent facility master plan options. Those project goals are outlined here on the screen. Determine the most effective use of resources now and in the future. Plan supported by the community and backed up by data. The idea was to explore all options, and you'll see that we explored quite a few options. And then solutions were to be driven by enrollment projections, pedagogy, increased efficiency and equity with newer, fewer buildings in centralized locations. We heard a lot about the amount of time it takes to traverse between all the different buildings and facilities, whether those are shared educators or district personnel or maintenance personnel and busing. Schools and sites as resources for extracurricular events, whether it be athletics, the arts, or et cetera, and community. And BE Pride was reiterated throughout this process. Improved instruction and climate through differentiated innovative safety and security. Innovation, safety, and security, that's two separate things. Increased efficiency and equity with full-time staffing. Increased flexibility, educationally and spatially, to promote learning and collaboration, and align with the state funding sources and be prepared for the 24-25 application. So those were the goals, and really the framework that was used as we evaluated the different options. In the investigation and analysis, we're going to touch on the enrollment study, the program analysis, the educational visioning, and then the facility assessment. So the enrollment study, we worked with a third party to do the enrollment study. There are a couple points here on the screen. The COVID effect, which we've seen impact different districts in different ways, really only changed your overall projections by about 20 students, so that wasn't really a key factor in the projections looking forward. Your migration trends and those that are either moving in or out of the district are inconsistent, so it wasn't really a reliable data point to use for determining whether there's an increase or decrease. The new housing, there's no direct impact on the enrollment based on the new housing starts. And birth trends, there is trends and births are really kind of all over the place. There wasn't a consistent trend that could be built off of. So it was recommended by the individual who did the enrollment projections that we look at the projects by town versus district, and district-wide projections to be the more reliable projection. Long story short, we're not really seeing a big decline, a big increase. It's kind of consistent. So the goal going forward was to look at consistent numbers and plan for flexibility. And usually what that means is you look at about a 3% contingency when you think about enrollment. So this is the table, the appendix of part of the study. And so historic decrease of approximately 600 students over the past 10 years. But you can see that that's spread across all the different grade levels. and then projected decrease of about 200 students going forward. So we're talking somewhere between 40 and 100 per grade cohort. So that might be a classroom or two if they're all in one grade, but usually they're spread across. So we're talking about a handful of kids in each grade, which really doesn't impact the number of classrooms that you would need across those grade levels. So the determination was to kind of keep it at what it is today and plan for that. And then the program analysis, we met with school principals, staff, district administrators, and program directors. You can see all the different schools we met with, as well as directors. We had some really great conversations looking at the floor plans, how the spaces are used today, how things are working well or not working well, and what we need to plan for going forward. And then we had some great educational visioning sessions with a robust group of educators and leadership within the district. From this, we came out with educational goals and general program needs. And those were, the educational goals were really looking at incorporating STEM curriculum pre-K through 12 and interdisciplinary opportunities. And different building, we call them design patterns, which are essentially architectural solutions that help support different program needs or educational goals that came forward. Those are the images you see at the bottom there. I'll go through the general program needs and then touch on those images. General program needs, top 13 were safety and security, ADA, spaces within the building. You have portables, what many people know of, making sure that all the spaces are included in the building. We have storage. We have meeting spaces. We have adequate SPED spaces. We provide for STEM and STEAM. We address restroom needs, provide separate art and music spaces, provide the spaces both inside and outside for athletics, address site circulation, proper organization within the school, and social emotional learning. And so those images at the bottom, the building organization and academic features, the top three results were around secure entry, breakout quiet spaces and embedded intervention, and a welcoming arrival. And then in regards to emotionally responsive building features, multifunctional student commons, areas of respite, and personalized dining and social experiences. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jamie, who's going to take us through the facilities assessment.
Thank you, Lisa. Jamie Willett with Harriman. So we, a host of architects and engineers at our group went through and assessed all the buildings. Before we did that, we started with your previous facility assessment that was done, I think in '22. And this is a segment out of that study that kind of addresses the FCI, so the Facility Conditions Index. It's a ratio of the anticipated repairs to the anticipated value of the building, and the lower the number, the better condition the building is considered. So we started with this, we reviewed the elements in that previous report, and then proceeded to visit each one of the facilities. And this is a map of where all those facilities are. I'm sure you all are familiar, but quite a host of buildings. It did not only include just all the schools, but also looked at the facilities maintenance buildings, the transportation, warehouses, and all those different aspects of this building here. So we took that data from the previous report and our findings on site at each building and created a heat map to indicate what buildings were in need of different pieces, like civil, so the site plan, the architectural components of the building, the structural components, mechanical components, electrical system, plumbing systems, and then fire protection systems. So this chart, this heat map, will kind of show you the areas in blue and green are you can see at the top, blue is excellent, green is good, yellow is fair, orange poor and red is critical, things that need to be addressed imminently. And there's a time frame to each one of those where they generally need to be applied. Now, there's things in each one of those, like in a blue element as an example, there may be things that are more critical, but this is kind of a general consensus of each one of those groups. So as we, and then additionally, we also review the utility cost comparison for each of the buildings. That we found, we reviewed with the district all the different costs for, fuel, electricity, water, where they do have it, sewer where they do have it, and compiled that total cost and brought it out to 23-24. Now, we're in 23-24, but this study was done. It was prior to that. And then we calculate the cost per square foot based on the square foot of the building and get a general sense of where each building falls. Buxton Center, you can see, is $1.36 per square foot, so that is one of the newest buildings you have. And we use that as a baseline through our study, as like a new building would be about $1.36 a square foot. Just to point out, Bonnie Eagle High School has a lower cost per square foot, but that is only because it shares some service with the middle school. So it's the average to that actually is highlighted below, and the little dots, I think, is $1.74 square foot. So. But you can see your buildings at Georgie Jack and Steep Falls are utilizing higher energy consumptions. So we took all that data, the review of the buildings, the analysis, the program analysis, the visioning sessions, and brought that to the group and started to come up with ideas for some options. And that list compiled of, I think it's 13, if I calculated up there, 12, 13, A through N. And I'll walk through each one of those. So option A is like, it originally was coined as do nothing, but through the process really realized there's no such thing as do nothing. It's creating critical items, addressing those critical items that have to be addressed in order to operate your schools for the next 10 years. Option B was to look at removing portables. It really wasn't a standalone option. It needed to be included in any option. So it was kind of, that ended up becoming part of any solution with the exception of do nothing. C is keep existing schools and renovate each of the buildings. Option D was to consolidate one pre-K through 5 utilizing Edna Libby and Georgie Jack. So taking those two schools and creating one consolidated pre-K through 5. Option E was to consolidate Edna Libby, Georgie Jack, and Steep Falls. Option F was to make 2 consolidated pre-K through 5 schools. One school would be housing Edna Libby, Georgie Jack, and Steep Falls, and the other one Hollis and HB Emory. Option G was to consolidate another one pre-K through 5 for all those schools, so you'd have one school for all of them. Option H was to move the 5th grade to the middle school. That also was deemed not really a solution. It was not as a standalone solution. It was a solution that would be weighed into all the options that end up addressing the middle school, high school level, or elementary, middle school level, pardon me. Option J was to distribute the elementary school special ed program. Again, this was one that wasn't really determined not to really be a standalone option. It was something that was desired by the district, no matter which option was selected. Option K was to consolidate Hollis and HB Emory. L was to take the elementary school, all the elementary schools population except for Buxton Center, move it to the middle school, move the middle school population to the high school, and then build a brand new high school and built to accommodate district offices, the special ed programs that are currently at Frank Jewett, as well as, and the alternative education is also at that school. Option M was considered the one campus solution. So a new middle school, high school, so a 6 through 12 school, brand new school. And then you'd move the pre-K or the K through 5, the elementary school population to the middle school, and the middle school population, no, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The elementary school to the middle school, and then all the other programs in the district, like the Frank Jewett program and programs and central office would go over to the high school. And then finally, N was to redistribute the elementary school. Actually, option N is very similar to option L. The difference is that it redistributes the elementary school population. So you have the upper elementary school kids would go to the current middle school building, and the lower elementary school students would stay at Buxton Center Elementary. Just to note that in all these options, Buxton Center remains Buxton Center Elementary School. All right, so creating those options was done with the committee, the advisory committee, but also was brought to a community forum. So the community forum number 1 and number 2 held at the high school addressed looking at these options and getting feedback from the community. Option 3 was refining the options, which we'll talk about a little bit in a second. There was also a series of 2 thought exchange. The first thought exchange, again, addressed looking at identifying those potential options. And then the second thought exchange was, again, to refine that decision to where we are now. So the first pass at refining the options brought us down to options A, F, G, L, and N, and you can read them on your sheets there. But this represented a host of kind of the low end to the high end of projects as far as economic scale, and so you can kind of see how those all lay in there. You can see where the utility costs weigh to each other, which actually remains pretty consistent between them. And then the overall total project cost, it's a rough order of magnitude, so it's an expected rough order of magnitude for a cost in a project that would be started in 2025. As an example, any project that was going through the state application process, that's 5 to 10 years out. So it's not realistic to say a project would start in 2025, but we had to have a baseline to start from. So we took all those options and again, just weighed them against the district goals, the project goals that were identified earlier by Lisa, or shown earlier by Lisa. So enrollment projections, pedagogy, and it's hard to read, so you can kind of see that it kind of drags itself to what it would look like across, but you can see that heat map again for each of the options. Red does not, shows that it does not address the goal, the particular goal. Orange, it partially addresses the goal. Yellow, it mostly addresses the goal. And green, it addresses the goals. And you can see as you build toward the right, it starts to address a little bit more, except for there's a little swatch in the middle there where some of those options were the ones that were kind of deemed they were not independent goals or independent options. So from this heat map and all the study and investigation, as well as the community input, A, G, and L stood out. So the critical items was option A. Option G was to build a consolidated elementary school. And option L is to build a new high school and bring the other schools, except for Buxton Center, to that campus. We brought those 3 options to the community and had each of the community members that attended vote on what they felt was addressed the needs of the district. It addresses the overall community needs, the staff needs, and students going forward. The first time we showed it in that presentation, we showed it without cost, and then the second time, which is the right side of that, we showed it with some cost data to see if that impacted decisions. You can see based on the votes there that it nearly identical. It didn't sway much. I think the only difference was A received an extra percentage. So option L stood out as the district's or the community's desire. So again, showing those heat maps together, you can see how option L.
Will you just hold on for one moment?
Sure.
Sorry, Jamie, could you just go back to the forum slide? So I just want to make sure everybody understands. We advertised this repeatedly, we pushed it out, and we didn't have a lot of participation, but we just want to make sure that, you know, that it wasn't actually 78 or 85 different people, because people had 5 dots to place. So there were more like 25 people that actually attended. So we just want to make sure that's clear. It wasn't for lack of trying to get people to go, and I understand competing interests, but, you know.
Perfect.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. So based on that data, the community's input, and the advisory committee's review and recommendations, you can see that the one that really addresses all the district's goals is option L, which is to build a new high school, move the elementary school populations of all the schools except Buxton Center to the middle school, and then the middle school moves to the high school. Renovations to both those buildings have to occur, as well as small additions. And then close the other 5 elementary schools because they're moving to that middle school. So this one met the project goals completely. So that was a solution brought forward, and there was a thought exchange that ran consecutively with that presentation, the last community forum, and pretty good feedback. I mean, there's 750 participants, 352 thoughts, 13,000 ratings, and I can't really read one of those, but I put a few of the comments that were made up there. I'll actually get a little closer to read it. I thought they stood out, and I just wanted to highlight them. That's easier. So we're definitely ready for a new school. Education is so important, all the activities that go along with it. This area is growing with so many amazing people. Let's join this century. And you can see the 5 stars shoots across the top there. Even with cost being a factor, option L is the absolute best choice and what is needed for our district and students. We can't keep doing spot fixes in our schools and facilities. We need to make strong and sound investments for the future, or in the future. A new high school with modern technology supports students and prepares them for their current jobs. It's very important to provide excellent education. Our students deserve to have equal opportunities to surrounding communities and learning environments to grow and advance in school and life. So highlighting option L, what that stands for. So again, I'm going to recap again. It's repetitive, but this will be a little more thorough than kind of the summaries I've been giving. So you'd move the elementary school population of Edna Libby, Georgie Jack, Steep Falls, Hollis, HB Emory to the current Bonnie Eagle Middle School, and that would receive renovations and an addition to support the additional student capacity that it needs. You would move the current middle school population, Anne Frank Jewett and the central office to the current Bonnie Eagle High School, and add a small addition and do renovations to that school to support that population. And then you would build a new approximately 1,100 student high school on that same site, actually adjacent to the facilities building. And I think this has a pointer. I'll try to do it on this side. So this blue building here, you can see it says new high school. That would be like a solution, proposed solution to locate it there. Buxton Center remains and would receive the A items, the critical items that it needs. And then, so this closes 5 elementary schools, or 5 schools, 2 district buildings, and builds 1 new school and addition and renovations to the existing Bonnie Eagle High School and Middle School. which I think that last one recaps the same thing over again.
Just emphasize the athletic and
Yeah.
events for the student body.
And so you're looking at the site plan, I showed where the new high school was, but in addition to that, you're getting playfield improvements. There's been a strong communication throughout this process about needing turf field. So that is looked at in this project, improving athletic facilities in general, as well as providing a outdoor performing arts area. Not a giant performing arts center is not currently in this scope, but it's a performing arts area on the site. Improving traffic flow on site. We've added some roads so that buses can get through from the new high school location to the middle school and elementary school area. That was something that was conveyed very heavily, that transportation needed a way to get across there to help keep them out of the main thoroughfare roads. We've looked at adding, an area for playgrounds for them, because now you're going to have an elementary school population there. So that's housed there. And I think that the existing facilities building would remain where it is currently. It includes the bus garage and transportation. I won't hit all of these, but I'm going to hit a couple of things. Again, you see the heat map. This option addresses those goals, all in green. Some of the pros and cons that were looked at was that it addresses the building and site concerns that have been conveyed. It consolidates resources so that most of the school population, teachers, staff, and students are in a centralized area, not very far from Buxton Center, so kind of brings things a little closer. And it builds student relationships, and it creates a centralized community, a one Bonnie Eagle. Some of the cons is it does create a larger elementary school, but I will say designing schools for as long as I have, it's not one giant elementary school. It is multiple schools within a school. You can design it in such a way that it doesn't feel like a giant building for younger students. You do that for the elementary, do that for the middle school as well on some level. So it is not a giant, large elementary school, but that was a con that came up in discussions as a consideration. And then the other con is cost. It's certainly a costly solution because you're touching a lot of big buildings. So you're building a new one and building a couple of, or renovating in addition, adding to the other two big buildings. So, and then I actually skipped over some of the previous community forum input comments. I would like to touch on those. Many felt that this would be isolating for Buxton Center. I know the district, this was a community input, but the district did not feel that was necessarily the case. I believe, actually I shouldn't say the district, I should say the advisory group, because Buxton Center is an entity that exists and they're close and they'll actually bring them closer to the other schools than some of, Hollis is, Emory is quite a distance away, so it actually consolidates better. And then, so again, that says, but the next comment is, but would be one community, one place. So it actually, it was contradicting input. Centralized location, traffic and busing were a big concern. And so that was something we looked at with providing that on-site traffic improvements. If we built a new high school, where would it be? How close? And this is before we had any of these plans to kind of show and review. And then parents are going to hate it, kids are going to be fine with it. So I thought that was kind of funny to hear from, it's probably true about most things, right? So, yeah, I think that brings us to next steps. So as we close out?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of pulling together the final pieces for the actual report, which entails all the information you've heard today, tonight, and are actively putting together the state applications for each school within the district to provide the most flexibility in a potential solution and getting on the state-funded list. So those are due August 30th. We are working with a small group to pull those together and get all of this great information that we've learned from your community and your advisory committee and all the help along the way to put forth the need in the schools and inform the state on what the potential option could be moving forward. With that, we'll just turn it back to you, Clay.
Well, and while you're still here to answer any questions, but I just wanted to add a little more context to this option. So if all things were equal, right, and money was unlimited, the best option, I think everyone would agree, would be to take what we have and improve every facility in our district, right? Build new schools, renovated schools that are modern schools. But if you look at the formula we followed so far, at 15 years in between each school being potentially rebuilt, that would be 120 years before all of our buildings would be renovated. And we'd have 21st century schools and we'd be in like the 22nd century, right? So we'd still be behind. And that played into the thinking of this approach of one plan that gets everybody something. And while I recognize that if we were able to accomplish this, there would be a loss. The community schools, people have strong feelings about that, but I want to go back to Buxton. 15 years ago, people were concerned about giving up their neighborhood schools and having one central school in Buxton. And I think when you walk around Buxton School now, I think those concerns are all forgotten. And people are very happy. And in one of the comments when I talked to the principal, the assistant principal's here tonight, I won't put her on the spot, but Mr. Pendleton, I said, Mr. Pendleton, do you think Buxton families will be upset to be left out of this process? And he felt pretty strongly that most families in Buxton are pretty happy with what they have, as I can imagine they would be with a new school with more modern facilities for students, right? So a lot of the discussion at the committee was, how do we get all of our kids something? Because if the way this works is you don't get to put in well, you can put in applications, but the odds of being selected for multiple projects in one district are minimal, almost non-existent. So we might get one chance, one shot at being selected for state funding. And everything that we're hearing is that the state supports large projects. They don't want to rebuild small schools. They want to see you consolidate. So that thinking went into this. And just a quick financial sort of breakdown. It is going to cost money. That it goes without saying. But our do nothing option, if you remember, was $80 million for only critical items. That doesn't improve anything. It doesn't even paint a classroom technically. That is just boilers and roofs and windows and structural stuff, ADA bathrooms. You're not getting a lot for $80 million. That would be locally funded. So let's say we took a bond for $80 million to get all of that done. The cost to taxpayers is conservatively going to be a $5 million at minimum jump in 1 year to the baseline budget, if not more, right? And we have accomplished not a whole lot other than safety. We haven't improved anything for our kids or students. A $350 million project, if we got state participation, and let's say the local share was 10% of that, now you're talking about a number that is probably the same, maybe even less, but probably about the same as that $80 million. So potentially we could get, in the right conditions, all of this for the same price as fixing what we have with just the critical items. So all of that has played into the thinking of this approach. And I just want to say again, this is all conceptual. No decisions have been made. This was all preparing to put in applications for our schools so we would have a plan to present to the state that then would become something we'd have to work through a whole nother process. If we have that good fortune to be finished high enough, I'm hearing everybody's having the problems we're having all around the state. There's going to be a lot of competition. If we can get one school in the top 10, there is a chance that because our solution involves all of our schools, that one school could be enough to get our foot in the door to get state funding for a large project like this. Now that is probably a small chance, but I feel like if we don't risk anything, we won't get anything. So I don't want people to get too concerned, well, you're closing our schools and you're not thinking about our kids. I can tell you that large elementary school, I have been an elementary principal. I'm not interested in a giant child factory of over 1,000 kids. But as Jamie said, that school could be designed thoughtfully. So there are 3 offices, 3 principals, 3 entrances, and kids are assigned to their school that still has that small school feeling within the building, right? I think the high school, in a lot of ways, the layout is more appropriate for middle school in a lot of ways because it's so broken up. Well, middle school teams can be broken up. But high school, the traffic flow in that high school is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. If you go stand outside the cafeteria, some of you might have gone there, it hasn't gotten any better. There's a choke point that you have to walk through at some point in the day multiple times, and it's problematic. And then one of the things we talked about is, great, let's have a brand new elementary school and then send our kids to the high school, which is, antiquated and old. Where's our Bonnie Eagle pride, right? So I'm not interested in doing harm, but I will tell you that I feel pretty strongly this proposal gives us the best chance to give everybody something in the schools that they deserve. So again, no decisions are made. There will be more community input if we get any further in the process, and the hard work now is to craft these applications so that they get attention, and maybe we have a chance. So, all right. So, any questions for
well
Harriman
said.
or for me? I'm happy to.
Thank you very much to Lisa and Jamie for being here tonight. Are there any questions from members for the presenters? Director Kreutz.
It's not a question. I had the privilege with Mr. Marian to sit on the advisory committee, and just thank you to Harriman, thank you to everyone who was brought together to kind of have these discussions. They were very thorough. No stone was left unturned. Everybody provided a ton of data and information and input. Thank you to the community for everybody who participated. It was just really important, and now we put our faith out there, and hopefully we can come to it. But for anyone questioning it, it was a very thorough process, and we really appreciate the guidance that we got from Harriman. So thank you. It was a pleasure.
Likewise, great input from the entire community and the committee.
Thank you to Directors Kreutz and Marian for your service on this advisory panel. It's very important in input. Director Welch.
Just the next steps. It sounds like applications are due on August 30th. What can we as a community, we as the board expect after that process? When will we hear back from you? Tentatively.
Gotcha. So right now we're working with a small group of people to put together those applications. And those applications will be sections will be drafted by us, sections will be drafted by the school district. We'll come together, review all of those, get them ready for the submission. Before they are submitted, they do have to be signed off by the school committee. So we will, in the planning process, identify when that needs to happen in order to have you guys sign off and get those applications up to the state on prior to August 30th at 5 p.m. And from there, then the state takes the applications and they put together a schedule for going to all the schools and walking the schools based on the information they were provided. And generally, it's about a year until they put together that priority list. And what they do is they rank all of the schools that applied on a list, and the one with the most need is at the top, and likewise, the one with the least is at the bottom. And then they start to roll out what they call the project list. And so they will do that usually in sections, usually 1 to 3 at a time. And that comes out anywhere from every 6 months to every 2 years. Next couple projects will come out. The last application was done in 17-18. And they just released the last funded project on that list, as in to inform the district they got a project, and that was number 9 on the list of 74. So it's about, depending on where you rank, it can be about a 10-year process from application to understanding if you got a project and or realizing a project.
On the facility master plan, facility assessment summary of overall conditions slide, I'm seeing that 2/3 of our campuses are either at critical service, end of life, or at poor service, life of systems for our fire protection. And I'm wondering if you could explain how you arrived at those conclusions and if these figures represent an imminent safety hazard.
So fire protection, as an example, those schools identified in red, I think all of them they just don't have sprinkler systems in them. I guess I would say inherently there's some risk to having no sprinkler, but there are buildings all over the state and schools all over the state that don't have sprinkler. It's when you build a new school or renovate a school completely, you would add sprinkler in. But I would say there's no imminent safety other than a potential fire, I guess, in that risk. So.
I'm going to just add to that. Thinking about sprinkler, sprinkler is mostly around protecting the structure to make sure you can get people out in time. A lot of schools, depending on their size, within the code to which they were built at that time, did not require a sprinkler depending on how they were built and what building type they were. So again, to Jamie's point, if you were to go back and update or add on to those, that's when you would want to add a sprinkler.
Could I just add to looking at that list, and I don't want to minimize the concern at all, and I appreciate the question. Like, I know that Hollis Elementary, we could empty that building in 90 seconds, right? Steve Falls, I'm sure, is similar. Georgie Jack, probably less. Edna Libby is the only one that probably takes a little longer with the second floor, and I'm sure that is part of the rationale why we don't have kindergarten and first grade classrooms placed upstairs, is because of exiting in an emergency. So it is definitely a concern, another reason why we need new schools, but for those schools, I think they all can clear out pretty quickly.
So just to follow up, which may actually be for the superintendent, but I'll just ask it in this form now as we're discussing it. Bonnie Eagle High School, the middle school, and the new elementary school, they're all excellent in terms of their fire systems there. Is this part of a workflow? Like, should we be expecting some renovation to be done to these campuses, you know, on a rolling basis?
I would see that as depending on what happens next, because I think the result of where we place on the list will determine what we need to do to these facilities and how long it might be, and then there will be decisions we'll have to make about renovations to our existing facilities. If, for example, let's just dream big, we finish third on the list, that's a different conversation than if we finish 15th or 30th or 75th about what's next.
All right. Are there any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Student report. Chair recognizes the student representatives for the purpose of providing a report.
Okay, so for Bonnie Eagle High School, with this new trimester comes the first day of spring, and the new trimester started today. We have approximately 12 weeks remaining in the 2023-2024 school year, with our seniors having even less time, approximately 10 school weeks. Any senior with academic questions or concerns, especially around graduation requirements, should be reaching out to Student Services and/or their sync teacher for guidance. Any students in grades 9 through 12 who is eligible to complete credit recovery from the second trimester is strongly encouraged to do so. SEL Screener Survey, the second of 3 social and emotional learning screeners, first completed back in the late fall, is scheduled to be given to students during the sync time on this Wednesday. This optional screener/survey will help inform us of students who may be at risk of poor learning outcomes, to include academic, behavioral, social, and emotional. Any parent or guardian who would like to exempt their student from participating in the screener is asked to email Ms. York. Athletics, the 2024 spring sports season is coming right up. There will be informational team meetings with the coaches as follows. Girls and boys track happened this afternoon in the cafeteria. ACEVAB testing. ACEVAB will be available to students grades 10, 11, and 12 beginning on April 4th, 2024, at approximately 7:30 a.m. in Portable 13 at Bonnie Eagle High School. The test will take approximately 2 hours and can help students to identify a career potential or assist students who have an interest in one of the military branches. If you have questions, please contact Ms. Jarvis. And Bonnie Eagle Music Department held Pops Night on Thursday, March 14th in the cafeteria.
At Bonnie Eagle Middle School, congratulations to our February Students of the Month. Hannaford Helps is being brought to our community for spring 2024. Shoppers will earn $3 school dollars for every 4 participating products purchased. Look for the Hannaford Helps schools shelf tags in stores. Download Hannaford Helps app to join. Students and parents, do not forget to claim items at the Lost and Found. It is starting to overflow. March 13th was Fans in the Stands. Students wore BE colors and cheered on the unified basketball team at their game against Massabesic. And on March 20th is early release.
For Buxton Center, Buxton Town Hall is holding a Bunny Trail Egg Hunt on March 23rd from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. This is a free event for all. There is a PTO meeting held on March 13th, and Buxton Center is in need of help for filling their snack cabinet. Allergy nut-free snacks, please. Send in with your child to the main office or send them directly to the school. Thank you for your help. Look out for more information about the future readathon, and the book fair is also coming to Buxton Center, and approved volunteers are able to sign up to help out.
At Edna Libby Elementary School, the Standish PTO is hosting a Maine Mariners fundraising night this Friday, March 22nd at 7:15 p.m. This event is being held at the Cross Insurance Arena, Portland. Reach out to the Standish PTO with any questions. Edna Libby is holding a spring music concert on Thursday, May 30th at either 9:30 a.m. or 1 p.m. Mark your calendars. And Spirit Week was held from March 4th to March 8th for Read Across America Week.
HB was also holding a Read Across America Week celebration. As a reminder, the readathon closes tonight. Log those hours. And they celebrated Social Worker Appreciation Week this last week. Thank you, Ms. Poulin, for all your hard work at HB in Steep Falls. And the book fair was visiting the school from March 6th to the 8th. If students still want to purchase items, parents are still able to online. And parent-teacher conferences were held on March 7th as well as March 12th.
At Hollis Elementary, spots still remain open for Girls on the Run. The season begins April 2nd. Sign up online to join. WMTW's Ted McClerney visited the third classroom last week and taught the third graders about meteorology. On April 3rd, from 5:30 to 7 p.m., is Hollis Loves to Learn Night. Join for some family fun. Forms should have been sent home with the students to sign up. And shout out to Miss Mary Chappell, the York County semifinalist for the Teacher of the Year. We wish you luck as you move on in the process.
And lastly, for Georgia Jack Elementary, they were featured on March 12th, Maine Positivity Story of the Day. And join us on March 22nd for Math and Muffins at the gym from 7:45 to 8:45 p.m. The spring math meet for the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders is being held on Saturday, April 6th at Buxton Center Elementary School. Registration and check-in time is at 8:30, and the meet starts at 9 a.m. Deadline to register is March 27th, and that is all.
Thank you very much for that report. Are there any questions for our student members? Seeing none, approval of the consent agenda. The chair recognizes Director Welch.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Dr. Welch moves to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Director Sargent. Pending question is acceptance of the consent agenda. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? I have the members voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. The motion prevails and the consent agenda is accepted. Is there any objection to taking a matter out of order? Seeing none, the chair will direct members' attentions to item 19, review of the board self-evaluation. You should have copies of the draft summary on your desks. And without objection, I'm going to go down through the list of metrics that were either not unanimous, where we saw improvement from last year, or where we saw we got worse from last year. There was only one item where we did not improve from last year. So 1A, last year we were not unanimous, and the board annually reviews the high-level district goals and updates them as needed. I'm pleased to report that we improved on that metric this year, and now that we are unanimous and agreeing that we annually review our goals and update them as required. 1C, there was not unanimity in the metric there. The board reviews a mid-year checkpoint report prepared by the superintendent to stay informed of progress toward defined goals. 8 members agreed that we did that, and 1 member did not agree that we did that. That is the same status as it was last year, and will be an item for reflection as we proceed. 1D, the board receives an annual report on the progress made on the defined goals. All the elected members agreed that we received an annual report on the progress made of these goals, and the student members were, some of them were not in agreement there. 1E, the board annually evaluates the superintendent's performance and provides open, candid, and constructive feedback addressing areas of improvement. 8 members agreed that that was the case, and 1 member did not agree that that was the case. Are there any questions regarding section 1 of the self-evaluation? Section 2 establishes policy. 2D on page 2, the board delegates responsibility for implementing policy to the superintendent and holds them accountable. We unanimously concurred that that was the case this year, and that was an improvement from last year's metric. 3, section 3, were there any questions on section 2? Section 3 provides fiscal oversight and resource allocation. 3A, the board works with the community to develop a budget that balances the educational priorities of the district with sensitivity to the taxpayer's ability to generate revenue. 9 members agreed that we did that, and no members disagreed that we did that, and that is an improvement from last year's metric. 3C, the board establishes long-term financial goals to supplement its annual budget process that acknowledges vulnerabilities to its long-term revenue sources. 9 members agreed, no members disagreed, and that was an improvement from last year's metric. Are there any questions regarding section 3? Section 4 maintains strong board and community relations. 4B, the board keeps the community informed of district performance. 9 directors agreed that we achieved this metric, and there was some questions from the student members about whether we achieved that metric. Are there any questions about section 4? Director Welch.
Just, is that a decrease from 2023, do we know?
That was an increase from 2023. We let's pull it up right here, 4B. Excuse me, there was an error in my notes. 4B, the members were unanimous last year that we achieved that metric. The students were also unanimous last year, but they are not this year.
Thank you.
And just for the members of the public who may be wondering, there are several student members who serve on our boards and committees. All of them were invited to participate in the self-evaluation. So the responses may not reflect the student members who are present tonight, so I wouldn't want them to think that they were being put on the spot or that their anonymity was being questioned. There are several more student representatives who serve on committees, and they were invited to provide feedback. Section 5 meets all statutory responsibilities, operating legally and ethically. 5A, the board annually reviews the duties of school boards as defined in Maine statutes, Title 20A, Part 2, Chapter 101, Section 1001. We were unanimous this year in achieving that metric. We were not unanimous last year, and we have improved on that goal. Are there any questions regarding Section 5 of the evaluation? Item 6 was the area of policy where we made the most improvement. Section 6, board members act responsibly to fulfill obligations to MSAD6. 6A, Board members are familiar with school law regulations and MSAD6 policies and administrative procedures. 8 members agreed that we did this, and 1 member neither agreed nor disagreed. And that was essentially the same from last year's metric. 6B, board members work harmoniously with other board members and municipal officials. 9 members agreed, 2 student members agreed. This is an improvement from last year's metric. 6C, board members vote and act impartially for the general good of the district rather than for individual interests. 9 members agreed, 2 student members agreed. This is an improvement from last year's metric. Six D, board members accept the will of the majority once a decision has been made. All members agreed that we did that, including the student members, and this is an improvement from last year's performance. 6E, board members represent the board, employees, and school to the public in a positive manner. All members agreed, and this is an improvement from last year's performance. 6F, board members act responsibly to preserve confidential information, and we all agreed that we achieved that metric. And that is also an improvement from last year's evaluation. 6G, which is the final item in this section, board members refer all questions and complaints in accordance with MS86 policy, and we all agreed that we did that, and that is an improvement to last year's metric. You can all read the comments under each section and the recommended board training and development, and I would open up to any questions or additional comments at this point, if anyone has any. Chair recognizes the Vice Chairman for the purpose of approving the self-evaluation.
I move that we accept the self-evaluation.
Director Welch moves to approve the self-evaluation. Is there a second? Director Sargent. Pending question is acceptance of the board self-evaluation. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 11 members voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. The motion prevails and the self-evaluation is approved. Going back to the regular order, item 10, report from the board chairperson. The only item on my report tonight is that the Bonnie Eagle High School graduation will be held on June 7th, 2024, and it would be wonderful if members could attend that important ceremony.
You guys can come and watch
Director
me
Scott.
speak. I will be speaking at the graduation, so everyone come.
Extra incentive. So again, that's June 7th, and we will have some additional conversation regarding the status of the proposed budget, and that will be later in our agenda, and I'll have further advice at that point. Are there any questions regarding my report? Seeing none, report from the superintendent of schools. The chair recognizes the superintendent.
Good evening. First, I want to direct, well, first, I'd like to start by just acknowledging Sharon Beatty because I was realizing that Sharon was my son's first bus driver when he started kindergarten and probably for part of first grade. And I remember because he had sensitive eyes and would wear sunglasses as a little 5-year-old, and she was concerned about him tripping. But once we explained to her why he did it, she was very kind to him and helped him out. And that expression about her, them being her kids, were so true in every conversation I had with her. So I just had that memory of her, and I wanted to share that. I also want to direct your attention to a memo from the Transportation Director, just to kind of highlight some of the good work they're doing in that department. Mrs. Marian came across a DOE employee who does work in mindfulness and social emotional learning, which is really about just understanding what our kids are going through to help kind of recognize our emotions and how they might fit, and that's the work they're doing with this person. Because, you know, as a bus driver, it's one of the toughest jobs, I have to say. I feel like it's probably the toughest job in the district, to be driving that large vehicle, and then you have your back to a bunch of kids who aren't always doing what they're supposed to be doing, and to have the patience that's needed to deal with these situations on the bus and still drive the bus safely is pretty amazing. So, but everyone has their days, right? They react, and so trying to work with drivers on monitoring their own reactions and their own emotions when they're dealing with kids that have heightened emotions and in difficult situations. So I think this is really important work in talking about brain science. I won't get into too much detail, but there's the lizard brain. We all go into lizard brain mode when we're in a survival situation, and you don't access the frontal cortex of your brain, so you're living on your primitive emotions. That fight and flight response happens to all of us. And so when you're trying to deal with an escalated situation, it's easier for you to go there too. So it's about awareness and mindfulness, and I just want to commend the Transportation Department on this work and the drivers for participating and applying that good work. As I think was already stated today, actually, is the first day of the third and final trimester of the school year. So that's a milestone worth noting. I sent a letter to families last week, I think, about a couple of items, so I just want to cover those here also. One is about updated CDC COVID guidelines, and really the summary is that it's now being largely treated like any other illness, which not that anyone asked me, but I agree with that approach. There is no longer a recommendation for 5 days of isolation. It used to be, it wasn't necessarily required, but it was strongly suggested. That is no longer true. It's really based on symptoms now, as it is with the flu or other things illnesses that staff and students might have. So no longer required to isolate for 5 days. Because we were having these situations where people would test because someone in their household was sick, but they wouldn't really be sick. And then technically speaking, they were supposed to stay home, and it frankly didn't even make any sense. So I'm really glad to see these updates come through. A lot of the guidance is really just about hygiene and practices for any respiratory infection or any germs that you might catch. So wash your hands, cover your sneeze and cough, get outside, open the windows, stay away from others when you're sick, 24 hours fever-free without meds, and normal activities after perhaps taking 5 additional days. But it's really left to the individual based on their circumstance. So I'm a fan of that. And then the other item that I wanted to notify people about was the impending eclipse. You're seeing a lot more of it in the news. This came up months ago in our superintendent's group about whether we would be closing school for the eclipse. And I'm not trying to minimize it, but it's a pretty cool thing, and it only happens once in a while. But we're not going to see much here in Buxton, Standish, Hollis, Leamington, Maine. So I just don't. I couldn't, in good conscience, cancel school, and it's in the afternoon. School was basically getting out. So what I've said in the letter basically is if families want to go be part of this on their own, we will excuse that absence, but we feel like we need to just maintain our normal school day, so we will be having a normal school day. I'm sure teachers will do different activities related to the eclipse as a learning experience, but by the time it actually passes over, I think our older kids will be on at home, and then our younger kids might even be on the bus. So anyway, it's definitely interesting, and I'm sure there will be a lot of learning, but we will be having school as scheduled on April 8th. I believe that is 3 weeks from today. So let's see here. I wanted to congratulate our drama team once again for their performance of the Laramie Project at the Maine Drama Festival. They didn't place for the overall performance, but several individuals were recommended. I didn't actually get all of the names, but I know there were several actors that were recognized for an all-cast award. Crew members got special commendations for set design, construction, lighting, and student direction. So congratulations to that group of students. There's a lot of work that goes into that. My son participated in that when he was in school, and I think people don't realize. You see the football players practicing on the field, the soccer players. You don't always see all the work that goes into that. And we've had students go on to careers in the behind-the-scenes work. They've gone on to major at USM, not people that are out on the stage. So. Couple of resignations to report. Amanda Ertman, 5th grade teacher at Hollis Elementary, is resigning at the end of the year. Mackenzie Cooper, science teacher at the Learning Center, also at the end of the year. And Amelia Bertasca, English teacher at the Learning Center, resigning at the end of the year. one retirement to report tonight. Karen Haskell, grade 1 teacher at Buxton Center Elementary School, will be retiring at the end of the year. So congratulations to Karen for her years of service to our students. I don't know exactly how many years she's been here, but it's a lot. I'm kind of putting Molly on the spot, but I know she's been with us for a long time. So, many thanks to Karen for her service. And then I know it was mentioned in the student report, but I just want to also recognize Mary Chappell, who is a semifinalist for York County Teacher of the Year. So she will be continuing in that process. We've had very good luck with our district staff in that I was going to say competition. It's not a competition. In that process, let's just say. So good luck to Mrs. Chappell. And the last thing that I had on my list was just a commitment, I guess I'll say, to keeping the board updated on our status of the strategic plan, both currently and our plans moving forward. I think I mentioned this last meeting, but I will continue, because as part of the preparation for the strategic plan work is to review the strategic plan. So what I will try to do is break that down, and as part of my reports, give updates as we update towards that goal of doing the final and comprehensive update. As of right now, I don't know if I have board members that have volunteered for our first meeting for the steering committee. So I could be mistaken, but I am looking for a couple of board members to participate. And I think the first meeting, let me double check, is next week on the 27th, Wednesday the 27th at 4. It'll be here. So if you could make it, please let myself or Mr. Carlo know if you can be part of that process. And that is my report.
Are there any questions for the superintendent? Dr. Heath.
It's not so much a question, but I wanted to piggyback on what Superintendent Gleason said about the one-act play. I had the opportunity, you may not know this, my background was in theater, has been in theater for a while. And I had the opportunity to attend the performance on Wednesday, and I just wanted to congratulate them. They did such a fantastic job, and the play they picked was it's a really important play, but it's a difficult play, and they just did such a fantastic job. And the play it's a true story. It's the Laramie Project, and they cut it down into a one act, and it's about a community's response to the tragic beating and subsequent death of Matthew Shepard, who was a gay college student at the University of Wyoming. So the subject matter is very serious subject matter. And the sensitivity that they brought to the project, they should all feel so proud, because it's such an important message of transcendence and transformation for a community in the light of tragedy. And I also wanted to just say kudos to the student director. It's very rare that you have a student director, especially with subject matter like this. And Jules Pichet is the student director and had a huge role in making this production a success, and they should feel proud of their effort. So I just have nothing but great things to say about them. So I wanted to just make sure it was recognized here at the board meeting.
Thank you, Director Heath. Dr. Kreutz.
For the strategic plan committee, what is the anticipated frequency of meetings?
I believe we're thinking probably about once a month, maybe a little more often, but not more than twice a month, and probably one meeting over the summer, probably August, probably avoiding July. That's what we're anticipating, and it will be through the spring and then a couple meetings in the fall with the goal of wrapping by December.
Okay, thank you.
Director Dakotas.
I saw something posted that the Buxton Police were very concerned about the number of people passing buses. So I didn't know if that was totally valid, or if that was, I shouldn't question their report. I'm sorry. I was concerned about the possible impact of the speeding past buses.
Yes, and I agree. I would not question Chief Collins and the Buxton Police Department. I'm sure they're being very vigilant. I have not had complaints brought to me. I saw that post somewhere. I think it's related to the district feed. It popped up on Facebook, and I had not had a specific concern raised or have been informed about that. But I'm sure that's based out of reports they're getting. So I I support their efforts, and while we're talking about it, make sure that you are looking out for, those school buses and stopping. So, but nothing that I had known about before I saw the post.
The Vice Chairman.
Just want to, again, thank you for your continued communications on the importance of getting to school. I know it's been said before, but the changes to the health guidelines, these are challenging times for many parents. Although we think that everybody lives in the same bubble that we do, not everybody goes to the doctors every 6 months. So as we have changing guidance, it's important to get those messages out to people to make sure that people are getting their kids to school. I think we all see the importance of education. You can't do that if you're not in school. Making sure you're giving every parent the opportunity to try to take that choice, to not skip school for the solar eclipse, but to get to school if possible. And obviously, if they need to, you give them that option. But thank you for continuing to do that.
Any further questions? Policy Committee report of March 4th. Chair recognizes Director Dakotas.
Thank you. I am going to try a little bit to change my presentation mode and see if this makes any difference. I gave everybody a handout tonight about the process that the Policy Committee uses because I've been on the committee for a while, so it's become something I'm very familiar with, but there are more pieces to what we're doing, and I was doing a lot of research today for the policy meeting, and I just thought I would bring this to show the steps that we go through. There are many people to be involved in the process besides the policy committee, and it always comes to the board for final review, no matter what we're discussing. So thank you. So on March 4th, we met, and the meeting was called to order at 4:35. We did not have in-person public input, but I'm beginning to feel that some of the emails that we've been receiving since there were certain policies mentioned, that we have been getting lots of email about the policies that we are potentially going to discuss. The minutes from January 22nd were unanimously approved. And I just lost my screen, but let me try to say what I'm going to say. The policies many of the policies that we discussed at that meeting are in the category D, and D is all about fiscal management. So if I may have the liberty to go back to the first one last. So all the policies here are under fiscal management, the title of the whole part is called. And so the policies, as have been doing all along, are reviewed by the business office. So Dawn reviewed all the policies with Lori, and then her input comes to the committee. So we discussed, sorry, let me just go through. So DA we discussed, and that's titled Fiscal Management Goals Priority, and there were no changes recommended, so that comes to the board as an FYI. DBJ discusses the way that funds can be transferred. DFAA sets up the policy over the contingency funds, which we hear a lot about at the Budget Advisory Committee. DIE was audits and financial monitoring. We hear that report annually. And that one was also come forward without any changes recommended by the committee and the business office and the people who reviewed it. So DJB comes tonight for first reading, primarily because we changed the title. The title of the policy had been, or is still, budget as spending. And that was questioned as to the exact meaning, and it has been suggested that the title be expenditure guidelines, because that is the content of the policy. DJC and DM. DJC is petty cash fund. It discusses ways in which that should be handled, and DM is discussing whether cash should be in the school buildings. And those two policies did not receive any suggested changes, and so they come as FYIs. And I'm going to go back to policy JRA. JRA-E, which is somewhat more of a procedure, but it was reviewed by the person doing the data collection in the district, and they review it to update it if there are new laws that have been passed that guide how these policies need to be written, and that's what happened with this one, so that the access to the records was modified based on new laws, so that we have included now under Maine law, MSAD6 shall not publish on the internet and other media sources any information that identify a student, including but not limited to the student's full name, photograph, personal biography, email address, home address, date of birth, social security number, and parents, guardians' names without written parental consent. Guardians was added to the parents, and the legal reference was updated. And that's what drives, that's one source of what drives the policies and how they are developed. So that one comes for first reading as well. Let me just double check. Okay, and then at the end, we began a discussion about the possibility of creating two new policies, ACAAA, entitled Transgender and Gender Expansive Students, and the second one is ACAAB. It's called Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So we discussed that there are ways in which the policies are being implemented at the elementary and secondary levels, and material that is included in the handbooks for the faculty. Lori explained that the basis for the guidance is in the Maine Human Rights Act and state law, MRS 5. But we decided that we would like to discuss whether the policies that we currently have in place that discuss protection against discrimination and harassment include the information that is covered in these two policies so that we are assured that we are providing the protection that the students and the the adults employed in the district need. And we would bring that forward to the next policy meeting. And the meeting adjourned at 5:49.
Are there any questions for the policy committee? Seeing none. Resolutions for second reading and adoption. Resolution 24, JRA, Student Educational Records. Chair recognizes Director Dakotas.
Yes, there have been no additional input. There has been no additional input to it, so I would make a motion that we accept JRA as modified.
Director Dakotas moves to approve resolutions presented at second reading. Is there a second? Director Meserve, the pending question is to approve resolutions presented at second reading. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 11 members voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. The motion prevails, and the resolutions are adopted. Item 15, Finance and Facilities Committee report of March 14th, 2024. Chair recognizes Director Sargent.
We had 3 members meet. 2 were excused. Don was present and updated us. The bottom line is the top 25 is in order. The interim financial report is looking very good. And the dashboard is good with what we've got for expenditures and revenues. One item we covered, actually 2 items, but one we covered, we had a visit from next door, the Historical Society. 2 members showed up, and they have said to us that they have generated interest with the town of Buxton about taking over that property. And we would be interested in breaking that off and disposing of it to them. So it was unanimous by the group to hear more about it. We're very interested. It would be one less headache that we have, and it could be a win-win for everybody. They're looking at right now replacing the roof, and the minimum bid they've got is like $29,000, and it could be like 70. And they've got to generate the funds to do that. And if they own the building, they would have a better chance in getting it done. Now, to complicate it, if you don't remember this, we have shared water and sewer, and part of it goes across the street. So we're going to have it all written out nice and clear on how this is going to work if it does. But we'll say 5 years from now, we decide we don't need this facility here or there. It would still be offered basically to the town of Buxton first, if I understand it. So, you know, they're interested now because they can see what the Historical Society is. They could probably take care of their building. So that will be in the future. The other thing is, we discussed the budget and some of the options that the BAC had come up with. And then we also discussed whether we should possibly use capital reserve money for facilities or technology instead of using another $1 million in the budget. And that's what we agreed on too. We thought that was a good idea. And I think Clay spoke to that at the budget advisory. And it should be in your packet, but anyway, Adam has been very busy. And you look at some of the improvements that they've made, it really looks nice. But that is ongoing. So that's about it. Any questions?
Director Dakotas.
Thank you. So, two things, please. So the Historical Society is indicating that they will, are they going to buy the building from the town, or no? Oh,
I just want to help him out, just because I had more in-depth conversations
He has
with
another
with Jan.
conversation.
Thank you.
If we dispose, deep breath, right? If we
Yes.
dispose of any of our buildings, I agree with Mr. Sargent that we believe the process is that we have to offer them back to the town before we can sell them. So there's no, it's not really a sale, it's a process and statute that we have to offer them back.
right.
So in the past, the town has not, my understanding, this predates me, they had not expressed interest in some of the buildings we had previously offered back.
Right.
The current select board does have interest, according to what I've been told by the Historical Society, and they have actually invited a representative from the district. Winner, I drew my own name out of a hat, it was the only name in there.
Yeah.
And I'll be going, I believe it's Wednesday, to meet jointly with the Historical Society, with the Buxton Select Board, to just make sure they know that, with the blessing of the Finance and Facilities Committee, that the district is interested in pursuing this potential option to parcel off that building. But there are certain requirements, like we don't want to get deep into legal fees again, and the Historical Society has said they have raised money to help with the legal fees of sorting out variances and such. So there's a lot of work to be done, but the bottom line is, according to the Historical Society, the town is more interested in being supportive of this. So then it would be between the town and the Historical Society what happened next. So really, it's the town taking the building over, and then from there, it's between them and the Historical Society.
Interesting. Thank you.
Because I just want to add the roof, if they don't pay for it, we're going to have to pay for it if it's our building. So there's a little extra financial motivation for us to sort this out before that building continues to cost more money.
Thank you.
And to give you a historical perspective on one of the schools that we took down in Buxton, that we had to demo, we put it off for like 5 years. I think it ended up costing us, it was either 80,000 or 180,000 by the time we got done.
Yep. Hanson.
Yeah, because of the asbestos and all the materials that had to be sorted, and it was, you know, so if we did nothing, there'd be a cost factor too, if we had to demo the building. Plus, there are 2 portables.
Back, there are 2
And that
portables
would be
there.
their responsibility and what they do with them. So,
Okay. I've- one more
this is
question.
the first time Buxton has shown an interest in
Yeah,
supporting it.
interesting.
Please proceed.
Thank you. My second question, okay, so I think I heard you that your committee is recommending that money be allocated to Adam outside of the regular budget process. Am I saying that correctly? Oh,
The superintendent.
yes.
Mr. Sargent, if you would prefer to answer, I do not mean to take the
No,
floor
no,
from you.
you
I
do a
just
much
am
better
happy to
job.
help
A
out.
lot smoother.
It relates to the budget advisory meetings, because historically, as long as I can remember, we have allocated a certain amount of money as a supplemental addition to the budget for facilities, right? And that has ranged from $500,000 to $1.5 million. This year, Mrs. Pooler and I had long conversations around how we couldn't accomplish everything in this budget without the putting a significant burden on our taxpayers. And because we're entering into this process of a facilities review, we felt like that, once we know more about that process a year from now, that would be a more responsible time to look at facilities in the budget, right? So an avenue that we have not used before is we have a capital reserve for facilities. So unexpended money goes into the capital reserve, and it can only be spent with approval by the full board. So this is money, is it Article 7? 9. Article 9 in the budget from previous years has gone into this capital reserve, is earning interest. It is now over $2 million.
Okay.
And presumably it should be spent the way it was allocated on facilities. So rather than ask for supplemental, additional money, let's spend the money we've already raised. That's the rationale we're using. So if there's a critical item that Adam does not feel he can pay for in his operating budget, he will put together a proposal, come to the full board. The full board can approve that expenditure from that capital reserve, rather than putting more money, asking for more money from our taxpayers when they already approved this money. And the interest is really doing well right now. So that account happens to be growing pretty significantly, so.
So then, the reason, so then a priority list will be made. I'm getting a lot of input from people in the communities about the situation of the Hollis Quonset hut. And so I promised I would find out so that there will be a priority list developed, possibly if that part of the BAC, if that part of the budget is approved, then the facilities group will develop a list of what to do on the buildings
I
that
would
exist.
say it relates more closely to the presentation you had tonight. That those kinds of issues about what to do with a thing like a separate gym at a school that needs renovation, we would answer that after we have an idea what the future holds. If we're approved for a major project, we will have may have an end in sight. If we're not, we're gonna have to have those conversations around every school in the district. That gym is an example of one example of a thing that needs to be sorted out. HB Emory, for example, is starting to run out of classroom space at their site. Edna Libby runs out of space, so they're all related.
Yes, thank you. That's what I've been trying to say, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I had the up-to-date information. Thank you.
And the Technology Capital Reserve has about $1.1 million in it right now, so if they need more computers and pieces, this is money that's just sitting in a reserve account earning interest on it, and rather than put it in a taxpayer. And historically, the last year or two, Adam hasn't been able to finish all his projects in the normal school year because of things that happen. And so, and things come up every year. So this is a way they can just come to the board and say, I need X for this project, and we can just move it forward.
Are there any additional questions for the Finance and Facilities Committee? Seeing none, the Budget Advisory Committee report of March 14th. The chair recognizes Ms. Pooler.
Thank you. I'm pleased to report we had a meeting on March 14th, and the Budget Advisory Committee came to a consensus to sign a resolution for a budget. The general fund, the adult ed, and the nutrition services total proposed budget is an increase of 5.43% over the prior year. The overall tax impact to the average tax impact to the towns is 6.56%. And the budget now moves to the Finance and Facilities Committee. We have a meeting March 28th to go over the budget with them, and then they will do whatever they want to do with it and then forward it on to the full board.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the business manager? Director Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have questions, but I have comments. I've sat on the BAC for the last several years, I think 5 or 6 now, 5 maybe. This year was one of the most pleasant experiences that I've had in my number of years of sitting on the BAC. Ms. Pooler and Mr. Gleason did an outstanding job of presenting all the information that the BAC committee needed in a timely, understandable manner where there weren't a lot of questions and discussions and dissension amongst the group. They presented us with 3 different budgets, and the one that we accepted was the one that Ms. Pooler and Mr. Gleason had decided that they were going to support. The other 2 were presented by a couple of members on the committee. We voted unanimously to accept the budget that Mr. Gleason and Mrs. Spooler presented to us, and I'm happy to report that this year I think we got done earlier than we normally do on this budget committee. So thank you very much for your work. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? All right. Curriculum Committee report of March 12th, 2024. Chair recognizes Director Kreutz.
Thank you very much. The Curriculum Committee met on Tuesday, March 12th at 6 p.m. in the central office. There were 3 of the committee members present and 1 excused. We approved the minutes, and there was no public comment. Our first order of business was to look at some new textbooks for the 24-25 school year. There wasn't a whole lot to look at. The big one, with quote unquote big, was the Mandarin 2. So we had approved the Mandarin 1 book for the Chinese course. Since just a refresher, we were not able to find a French teacher to fulfill the French class. However, we do have an amazing Mandarin teacher who's very enthusiastic, and nothing but rave reviews that we hear from the curriculum department. So that's great. So they needed to continue on and get the second book. So that was an easy approval. It's just the continuation, the next book in the series from Mandarin 1. And then it wasn't a textbook, but we did just review the actual reading materials. I think we talked about it at the last meeting that the middle school and early grades 7 through 10 have agreed to have a common set of reading materials, so that when the students move through the high school, they will know that all the students have read a particular book, and they can use that as a topic of discussion regardless of what teacher they have. So we heard about those and approved it. So we've got grade 10, they will be reading The House on Mango Street and Night. Grade 9 has agreed to Romeo and Juliet. Grade 8 has agreed to The Outsiders, and Grade 7 has agreed to Phineas Gage, a gruesome but true story about brain science. So we've got some interesting books in there, different types of prose, fiction, nonfiction. So we were very pleased to see that development. We talked about that books, sometimes as parents, I know Mr. Welch and I sometimes wonder if there are any paper things happening in the classrooms based on what we see and the proclivity of the iPads, but the curriculum department did assure us that there are books being used in the classes, and oftentimes we as a district only purchase 1 set of the books because the books get used in the class rather than back in many of our days where you practically fell over backwards carrying 5 textbooks around all day long if you didn't want to go to your locker. The students do most of the work in the classroom with the books in the classroom, and then they put it back on the shelf and are able to either finish up at home via electronic sources, or the work is just completed in the classroom. So that was it about the textbooks. Nothing further needs to move forward for that based on our flow chart. The next item we talked about was the bar overview, and I'm actually going to hold on to that because we have we're going to be voting on that for our next agenda item, so I'll get into it, but essentially it's a program to help evaluate the strengths of our students that they're starting at the middle school. And then we had item 5 was other business. So we talked a little bit about the strategic plan and whether we should be looking at it. So just so the entire board knows, one of the things that I've been thinking about as the committee chair is that the strategic plan is really the board's document, although we generally put it in the hands of the superintendent. At the end of the day, it is our document that we should really be following and checking up on and being responsible for. So I wanted to take a look at some of the work that the curriculum department, as part of the curriculum committee, what were the items of the strategic plan that the curriculum committee was responsible for, and what sort of progress has been made with it, and where do we still have opportunities and all that kind of stuff that we have with the living document. It dovetailed very well with what we're already going to be talking about with strategic plan. So Ms. Napolitano had already done a bunch of the legwork. I hadn't asked this of them ahead of time, so it was just very convenient. So she sent us over some documentation of sort of where they were looking at. So this is something that I would encourage all the committees to take a look at. I know we're getting into revising it and bringing the strategic plan back up. But as board members, we really should be owning that strategic plan. And, it's a partnership with our administrators in the district. But at the end of the day, it's ours. And then we also, Ms. McGuire reported out about some work going on in Augusta with the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. So there was, as we've talked about in the past, generally what happens is the standards get reviewed on a rolling basis. And so we were anticipating science and social studies were going to be coming down the line to be approved, and then for our groups to then take a look at any changes that would happen and make whatever changes were necessary and bring those forward to the entire board. So what happened this year in Augusta is things got a little crazy. So the science standards, they decided to just not change anything. They adopted the 2019 standards, so no changes, which is great for us because we are already meeting those standards, so there's no effort required. Social studies standards got kicked back in Augusta, so they did not get passed forward. So we do not have anything for them to work on yet, and we will, when we hear more, we will deal with it accordingly. We ended the meeting with discussion that there wasn't any pressing items coming up. I will be absent, which means it's going to be difficult for us to hit quorum. So instead of trying to come up with some busy work, we will not be meeting in April, and we will come back to our business in May. We adjourned the meeting at 7:19.
Thank you very much for that report. Are there any questions for the curriculum committee? Seeing none, curriculum adoption, BARR, educational system, parenthetically, building assets, reducing risks is the acronym. Chair recognizes the superintendent.
Thank you. I would just like to recognize that Principal Hand, our middle school principal, is here tonight. There's no formal presentation. I believe that they spoke about this the night we had the discipline workshop. It was referenced. The curriculum committee had a pretty thorough presentation, which we could go over, but I would, if I could just give a quick overview and then you tell me what I've missed, or what you'd like to add, either of you as the experts. BAR is basically a strength-based educational system. It's not necessarily a program, but it's an approach to use based in data. It's about building relationships and making connections. There's a lot of stuff about the history, which I won't necessarily get into, but what the middle school is looking to do with this is, it was a pilot group this year, and they would like to use it school-wide next year. We actually even have one of our elementary schools is looking into using this because there is a grant that is covering the implementation costs. There is no real ongoing cost. I'm looking at Mr. Hand. I don't believe there's an ongoing cost other than maybe a small stipend for someone to help coordinate, keep it running, but that's minimal. And it's all about scheduling in the different components of the approach to make sure everyone is getting the training and carrying it through. So it's really about making connections with kids and not letting kids slip through the cracks. So that was a really very high level, but anything you'd like to add?
I would like to add a few things, yes. So all those things that Superintendent Gleason said, so it's one of the things that we have heard is that from the administration at the middle school is that they will get into a room to talk about kids that need additional supports and sort of churn around that one or two kids, and they come out of these meetings not necessarily feeling like they have any solutions or forward motion to take or that anything has been solved, and then they get into the meetings and it happens all over again. So BAR is a system where it's much more strategic and planned out, and so what happens is they have a very specific agenda that they follow for every student that they talk about, and what they're talking about is they're talking about academic supports, they're talking about social supports, they're talking about, sort of the whole child. Education is absolutely part of it, and they go through, and it's very meticulous, and at the end, they're able to then make part of the process is to say, this is what this child needs, this is how the teacher should plan for it, and then they can go forward and actually make the changes. And it has two different kind of levels. There's the small groups, so that's small block, big block, I don't know exactly what that means, but it's the smaller groups where they do the quick analysis, they're able to look at the students and then make a decision and move forward. If they find that the students have a higher level of need, that's called Community Connect, and that's where they start to bring in additional resources. So if it's not just your teachers, if you need to talk to, if you need to bring in the parents, if you need to bring the social worker, if you need to bring counselors, any sort of additional supports like that, then they can devote time specifically to that. And again, it's very structured. So one of the things that I loved about this program is that every kid is going to have a touch point. So rather than only focusing on kids that have high needs, which are absolutely important, the kids that might normally just kind of be ignored because they're kind of in the middle of the pack are going to have an opportunity to have the team take a look at them and say, okay, let's not forget about all of our students. Take a quick look. Maybe they find that there aren't a lot of needs, but at least the staff can know that they have taken the time to look at it, and no child is going to be excluded from this process. Some great data points. It's been popular, so this program's popular in Maine. It's some of the numbers. Absenteeism has dropped by 3%. When they've done case studies, they have found that the freshmen pass at a higher rate of 6%. It's been found to be particularly good for males versus females. Looking at the data, it's good for everybody, but they've seen an even higher return on investment with males and white kids, so that's great. Like Clay said, funding is all pretty much taken care of by the state with this grant. Once we get the stipend for the coordinator, they'll be able to do the trainings, sort of like a train the trainer type of thing. And it generally sounds like a really great program. The time that's going to take, so the intent is to sort of do a swap here for the Positivity Project, and so we did talk about that a little as well. The middle school has found that the Positivity Project, while great, gets a little repetitive once the kids are in middle school. The lessons are not as engaging, they're not having as great an impact. It's wonderful to have that language that the kids have learned with Positivity Project, but it's just, the kids just aren't as engaged, and it's not a great use of time. So this time could be better spent evaluating the kids. And then part of the BAR program, I forget if it's in the presentation. If you wanted to look in the presentation, it starts on page 28 in your packet. Part of the BAR program, it's similar to the Positivity Project, where it's about connecting, it's about finding the strengths of individuals and building on the strengths. One person might be great at being confident, but another kid might be great at problem solving. All those different personality aspects. So the interactive portions with the students beyond the evaluations, the one-on-one evaluations, it has some really easy, innovative, fun activities for the kids to make those connections. It's honestly kind of like icebreakers. I'm a fan of icebreakers. I know most people hate icebreakers, but I love icebreakers. So that's kind of what they have to bring it in with the kids, and that's how to kind of make those connections and identify those strengths and highlight them. So we voted on this as a committee to move it forward to the full board with our recommendation that it be approved.
Sure, to inquire if that's a motion.
It can be a motion if there's no questions, additional questions. I would make a motion to accept the BAR program at the middle school.
Is there a second? Dr. Reserve, Dr. Heath.
I miss the curriculum committee because I love this stuff. I geek out on this. My question is just about data, and I'm seeing all of this Bucksport High School and things. I know you have a pilot. When can we expect to see some data from either the pilot, or do we have to wait until the end of next year?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So right from the get-go, myself and Mary Ann
You should probably go to the mic. Sorry, Mr. Hand.
Thank you, Mr. Hand.
You said I didn't have to come up to the mic.
I covered most of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Can you say who you are for the
I'm
audience at home?
Jim Hand, principal at Bonnie Eagle Middle School. I always forget to introduce myself, so thank you, Clay, for that. First of all, what I would like to share with you is that we trained 3 clans at before the school year began this year, and out of those 3 clans, every single one of those teachers have exclaimed that this is some of the best training that they ever received in their careers. And some of them who have been here around 40 years, all the way down to newer teachers. So it's definitely something that grabbed their attention for 2 full days in the summer on their own time, like before we even started school. So like it was pretty neat to hear that from them. And those same teachers have led smaller PD opportunities throughout the year this year, including last Friday, and it's gone extremely well. As far as data, we worked, myself, Marianne Foley, who, as one of our social workers, has kind of worked with me to work with our coach, who we meet with once a week. Every Friday, we meet with Brittany, and she comes and flies in three times in a year, and so she's already been to our school twice. But right from the get-go, at the beginning, what BAR requires is for us to give them data around our academics, our attendance, all of those pieces. So right away, we were working with Tanya to build new modules in Synergy to create this data, which has been, it's been a lot of learning. You know, we've had a lot of learning along the way, but it's gone really well. So we're hoping to have our own data, along with, like you said, there's a ton of data from the other 9, 10 other schools that are already in the state that are doing it, plus all of the ones who are piloting.
So hopefully by the end of the year?
Hopefully by the end of the year, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, not a problem.
Are there any further
I'll just wait here in
questions?
case there's more.
This is a comment, but my clan, Fraser, was one of the 3 clans that it was tested out on this year, and it was definitely much more engaging. And from what I saw in my classes, the students were having more positive reactions to it instead of just kind of going along with it but not really being all interested. So from what I saw, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Pending question is to adopt the Building Assets Reducing Risk Educational System. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 11 members voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. The motion prevails, and the motion is adopted. Item 20, upcoming Board of Directors meetings and workshops. On Thursday, March 21st, the Negotiations Committee will convene at 6 o'clock in the afternoon in the Central Office Conference Room. On Monday, March 25th, the Negotiations Committee will convene at 4:30 in the afternoon in the Central Office Conference Room. On Thursday, March 28th, the Finance and Facilities Committee will convene at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the Central Office Conference Room. On Monday, April 1st, the Policy Committee will convene at 4:30 in the afternoon in the Central Office Library. And on Monday, April 1st, the Board of Directors will convene at 6 o'clock in the afternoon in the Central Office Conference Room. Members will further be advised to hold Monday, April 8th, 2024, for a potential special meeting to review the budget. Chair recognizes Director Heath.
The negotiations meeting is at 4 p.m. It's on the 25th. You had read 4:30. It says 4:30, but it's actually at 4 p.m. on the 25th.
So, negotiations meeting on Monday, March 25th is at 4:30, at 4 o'clock.
At 4 p.m., yes.
4 o'clock in the afternoon.
4
And the conf-
o'clock in the afternoon.
The
PM.
confusion is that the other group is coming at
Yes.
4:30, but the actual meeting is, Director Heath is correct, starting at 4.
So the negotiations committee will meet on March 21st at Central Office at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and again on Monday, March 25th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, both at Central Office. Chair inquires if any members wish to provide notice of further meetings. Seeing none, the chair recognizes Director Welch.
I move that we adjourn.
Director Welch moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Director Dakotas, pending question is adjournment. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 11 members voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. The board stands adjourned until Monday, April 1st, 2024, in honor. And the board will be in order through adjournment, please. in honor and tribute to Sharon Beatty.